we are going to discuss with our friends Amanda and Jina positive collaboration strategies for your RFP evaluation. So let's welcome them to the stage.
Thanks so much for being here. My name is Amanda Boss. I am a corporate accounts director at Roche Diagnostics. I couldn't be happier to be joined by Jina Forys, director of acute laboratories at M Health Fairview. So thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so let's get this party started. To kick us off, you all just went through an RFP for chemistry, and maybe talk through what would you like the group to take away in the next 20 or so minutes.
Yeah, so I've been through a number of analyzer evaluations with my organization, or RFPs, and every time I go through one, it seems like I learn something really important, something new and important every time. And these decisions are so crucial to the operation of our laboratory, and we so badly want to get the decision right. And so what I hope that the audience can take away today is some learnings from my experiences of some strategies that you can incorporate in your RFP process for your organization.
Well, knowing you and knowing the teacher that you are, I don't doubt that will be delivered for a moment. But maybe first, introduce us to M Health Fairview, please.
All right, so M Health Fairview is a collaboration between Fairview Health and the University of Minnesota Physicians. So everywhere where those two organizations overlap is called M Health Fairview. We have 10 hospitals, 1 academic medical center at the University of Minnesota, and then we have 9 other community hospitals. 6 of them are in our metropolitan area, and then 3 are in more rural areas, so a wide variety of different types of hospitals. We also have 60 clinics across our state, and so a lot of labs go through our organization. We also have a local outreach support program as well, so we get a lot of outside tests there in our laboratory. And the problem that we were trying to solve for this last RFP that we did was really choosing a chemistry analyzer that was going to help our organization be standardized. So up to that point, we had acquired 2 different health groups, and so we actually ended up with 3 unique chemistry analyzers. We had 3 different vendors in our system, and so we did not have standardized chemistry, and that caused a lot of problems. So if you were a clinic patient and you went to this clinic, you went to this M Health Fairview clinic, your lab might go to this lab, your blood might go to this lab to be tested, but then you decide to get your blood drawn somewhere else on a different day, and it goes to a different lab. There's different reference ranges, different critical values. The providers were very confused. We knew we had to standardize chemistry as quickly as we can to really optimize patient care, and we also wanted to create a single core laboratory. So we had kind of regional hubs, but we really wanted a single hub and spoke method in our lab, and we did not have the capacity in any of our regional hubs to be able to do that. And so we needed new equipment that was standardized, that helped us to create that single core lab hub and spoke model.
And so maybe to take a step back and think about previous experiences with RFPs, what did that process historically look like for M Health Fairview?
Yeah, I would say that historically, when we were looking for lab equipment, it was very technically focused, right? What are the technical aspects of the different analyzers? What sets the different analyzers apart from each other? And so it was a lot of, what's the analytical measurement range? What are the different assays that they have? Does that have onboard calibration? What are the calibration stabilities? And so the very first RFP that I ever oversaw was about 12 years ago. And I really thought my job was to make everybody happy, right? So I thought that my job was to get us through the RFP process and have every site at the end of it be like, we're happy with this decision. And what I realized is that isn't possible, right? There's too many pros and cons. And so On the second RFP that I oversaw, I focused on a system perspective, but it was still really technically focused. We all went through the analysis together, but it still was at the end of the day, I think we really focused on the technical aspects of an analyzer rather than anything else above that.
So it sounds like your approach this time around was a little different. And I suppose therein lies the question, what changed for this time? And what were you trying to do differently for this RFP?
Yeah, I think a good way to sum it up is we got exactly what we were looking for. So keep in mind that when you are out there shopping for an analyzer, think about, you think about the technical things you want, but what are the non-technical things that you want? What are the other things that are important to you in that relationship with the vendor or the service, the quality, and how do you assess those things, right? So this time around, we knew that we wanted to have a system focus and that we wanted more than just technical. We really wanted to think about quality, we wanted to think about collaboration, we wanted to think about all these other sort of X factors that are really hard to quantify when you're doing an RFP.
So you're sort of, in some ways, rewriting the way an RFP is done, which means you're kind of needing to recalibrate your team's thinking throughout this process. And so how did you prepare your team for what is a massive decision for the largest health system in Minnesota?
Yeah. So this is something that I think I'm most proud of, is the way that we went about aligning our team. And so we really created a vision from the very beginning of, we had a small group that we called our decision-making committee. And this was our vice president of laboratory, our system medical director, and then 3 regional directors that represented two different acute historical spheres, as well as our ambulatory group. So there were 5 individuals that were the decision committee, but we weren't making the decision on behalf of our unique oversight. We were making the decision on behalf of the system. Then we had about 24 or so key stakeholders. So these were our site operations leaders, our technical leaders, our site medical directors. We went through and identified all of them from the start, and we identified the role of each person from the start. And we said, here's how we're gonna make this really hard decision, and this is what your role is going to look like. And I think when we introduced it that way, it was met really positively. The very first thing we did was talk about critical criteria, and so we had kind of a draft saying, here's what we think is important for this analyzer process, but what are things maybe that you can tell us that we're not thinking about? So we got that feedback from all the key stakeholders. We put together our list of critical criteria. They were involved in all of the demos and got to give feedback on kind of what they thought were key red flags maybe, or things that they loved about different choices. And so that was, I think all around, we were able to kind of have a very well-run process that got everybody on board and was clear what everybody's roles were.
Being on the receiving end, I can echo that it was very clear what the process was and what the next steps were. So maybe the fun part. So how did you handle the negotiations, right? As you're kind of digesting everyone's best foot forward, how did you then sort of transition into handling negotiations?
Yeah, so kind of what I insinuated before is we were going to have both a technical and a more of a vendor support section of our critical criteria. So we identified some key things in our critical criteria that weren't easy to quantify, right? We're not gonna go ask the vendors, how well do you collaborate with your customers, right? That's not really gonna be helpful to us. They're all gonna give us their best, sales pitch there, right? So it was, how can we actually evaluate collaboration? How do we evaluate quality from a neutral perspective? And so it was laying out that critical criteria. And then in the negotiation process itself, that's where I realized I did things very different than I did the first time. So the first time, or maybe even all the other times, I had kind of felt like I had seen what I imagined to be like, how do you negotiate, right? And it's sort of this game, and you're trying to like win the game, and it's kind of this like arm wrestling match, right? Like, ooh, I'm gonna win, Amanda, like, let's go. And you kind of, you're a little cunning, a little sneaky, a little strategic maybe. And really what I realized my strategy was this time around was just to be open and transparent and to say, okay, here's where I'm struggling. Here's where our organization needs help. What do you have to offer me in helping to solve my problems? And so instead of it being this cunning strategy game, it became an invitation to help me solve my problems. And that was a very different way during negotiations than we had done historically.
And your team's transparency really helped us to make sure that we were bringing the right parts of Roche forward to align with what we were learning your problems were that you were trying to solve, as well as what the organization was aspiring to be. So this became something that I think we both have tattooed, right? Isn't it? Mm-hmm. Like the tattoos right here?
Yep.
Right. And really was kind of our shared kind of co-created North Star. So the three gray boxes were the vision that James Hereford, the CEO, had, right? So he wanted to reduce the cost of care within the system by 20% within the next 3 years. And to do so, challenged each of the service lines to reduce care variation and unwarranted resource utilization and cost per case. So the lab's answer was, okay, we can contribute to that by standardizing, but by your team teaching us about the importance of these 5 boxes helped us to make sure that the people we brought forward, the solutions we highlighted, the unique strategies that we brought forward really were enabling the lab to contribute to the enterprise strategy. And so this showed its face a lot, and it really helped keep us on track to make sure we were doing what it looked like you were trying to create.
Exactly.
There you go. So thanks. What surprised you in the process?
So the thing that really surprised me the most was, you expect when you're going through an RFP that there's going to be pros and cons of the technical aspects of the equipment, right? There's going to be things you like, things you wish were maybe a little different. But really, this invitation to help solve my organization's problems, really, different vendors reacted very differently to that invitation. I was really surprised. And what I loved about Amanda's approach and the approach from Roche was always coming back to this common goal, that we had a common goal, and every discussion we had was centered around, here's what we're trying to do together. Here's what I heard you say you needed, and here's my recommendation or my suggestion on how I can help you solve for that. And so I do think that really set different vendors apart more than I was expecting it to through the negotiation.
So then as you and your leadership team gear up for RFPs in the future, what do you envision you'll do differently?
Yeah, I know that the next RFP that I'm involved in, or any advice I would give someone, is to be really intentional about what it is you're looking for. I would be even more intentional about those qualitative things, the things I can't quantify. Do you have a troponin assay? Yes or no? Right?
We do.
Yeah, okay, good. Good to know. But the things that are, what does collaboration look like to that vendor? What does service look like to that vendor? What's your strategy to partner with our biomedical engineers? Things that you can't necessarily check a box, yes or no, or give it a hard number. But I would be more open with the vendors that are involved in the RFP that this is what I'm looking for, and this is how you can collaborate with me. So I think I would even be more intentional about making that invitation clear. I am inviting you to collaborate with me in the RFP and in the negotiation.
Very good. Very good. So I think we're sort of getting to the end of this story, right? Which overlaid years of your team's preparation and our sort of working together to figure out what the ultimate decision would be, and obviously now working through the implementation process. So first and foremost, thank you for your leadership, for your team's collaboration and transparency. It helped us to be the best that we could be, simply, and that's something we will continue for years to come. As we wrap up, for those that are in the room, what would you say are kind of the key takeaways, the go home messages, if you will, for what you've learned?
Yep. I think you could say, that everything that you can do up front to prepare your team for a decision and an implementation is time well spent. So rather than jumping in, you can think about what's your strategy, what are the things that are really, really important, and really think about those non-technical things. Think about the things that when you've worked with a vendor that haven't been satisfying, and how do I address those things now? Even if it's with your existing vendor, invite them to maybe operate differently. Just because it's the way they've always done it doesn't mean it can't be different. And so really thinking about not just the technical aspects of your needs. And then really a key thing, and this is a red flag word that when someone says this word, is always a time to pause, and that's collaboration. When someone says, I want to collaborate, let's collaborate, what does that actually mean? Does that mean I'm going to buy your stuff and you're going to sell it to me? Cool. Or does that mean you're going to actually help me when I have a problem? When I have a problem, are you going to be like, sounds like a you problem? Or is it going to be like, oh, here's what we've seen other customers that have struggled with this. Let me go out and ask more questions. Let me connect with people in my organization and help you solve, even if it is a me problem, help me solve my problem. And you can actually assess that during your RFP. How collaborative someone is with you to help you solve your problem. So just to be clear, when we were negotiating with Roche, we did not get everything we asked for, right? We asked for a lot of things, and it wasn't just like implicitly, sure, yep, we can do all that for you, Jina, just whatever you say, we'll do it. But I was really clear about, here's what my problem is, here's what I think the solution is, here's what I think it would help to meet our goals. And then a lot of times there was this space for innovation, right? There was space for, you know what, we can't do exactly what you just asked, but we can do something that still meets the heart of what you need, and we can figure that out together. And that was something that I learned during our negotiation process that absolutely has continued throughout implementation and into operations. Like, I know that when I have a problem, there's someone that's going to be there to help me solve that problem.
Well, thank you again for keeping that door open, that communication going in both directions so clearly. I know I speak for an army of folks at Roche that we are honored to be able to support M Health Fairview and you and your colleagues. I think there's a lot more lessons learned, and so if anyone has any specific questions, we are welcome to consider. Well, not me. You don't want to hear from me. Jina.
You might want to hear from Amanda. But
answer them.
Jina, thank you so much. Just a quick question. What is one thing that you think vendors can do to improve your experience during the RFP process? Just one thing that might just really stand out to you.
Well, gosh, this is going to sound really silly. It sounds too simple, but I think listening is the number one thing. And even if your first reaction is like, no, we can't do that, or that isn't possible, or this is a crazy idea, what are you thinking about, Jina? That's, but to really get to the heart of why. So if I were in the vendor shoes working with a customer and they requested something of me that I couldn't do, I would really ask for more questions. And maybe I don't even know as the customer why I want that, right? Tell me what it is that's going to support, or how does that help meet your goals? So I think one thing that Amanda did really well is keeping us aligned on that vision, and there was always something to go back to. So when we had to make hard decisions of where are we going to give and where are we going to take, we could go back to that and say, yeah, this is a mutually beneficial decision that we feel both parties feel good about going forward. So yeah, I don't know if that was one thing, but kind of one thing.
Any other questions? Coming over to you.
So I'll be focusing on collaboration. So I know that there are preconceived biases, right? So in your collaboration, what do you do to make sure that you don't skew in a particular preconceived thought?
I think I understand your question. So what do I do to make sure that I'm clear about what collaboration is?
And that you don't already have a bias that you move towards.
Ah, that's a very good question. Okay, so I think having a clear definition of what is collaboration to you, but like what does it look like, right? And then being very clear with each vendor that you're working with what it is you're looking for. So for me, I would say I need someone that helps me solve problems when I inevitably have a problem working with your equipment, whether it's my fault or your fault or the equipment's fault or whatever. And so that was, I think having that definition, being clear with each vendor what that definition is, and inviting each vendor the same opportunity to meet or exceed that definition. That's, I think, how I would go about it.
Just to elaborate on his question, you said you were shocked at what some vendors brought back when you asked that question about solving me problem. Can you elaborate on what they brought back that shocked you?
Well, I think it's not so much that they shocked me with their response, but the difference was surprising. I wasn't expecting the difference, where some groups were very eager to engage with that invitation of help me solve my problems, and some groups were kind of like, no, that's not what you want. No, that you, like, here's what I can give you. And it was less of a help me understand why you want that. And that I think was the most shocking difference.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Jina. Let's give them a round of applause.